Bill Hayton is an Associate Fellow with Chatham House's Asia Pacific program. He joins us now from London. Really good to have you with us, Bill. This was a brutal attack by the Myanmar military, which, as we know, has killed dozens of people, including children. The army has justified it by saying the people they targeted were, in fact, fighters against the government. Is there any truth to that?
Well, I guess the problem here is that these self-defense forces, as they call themselves, are people, ordinary people. They are civilians who are joining up to resist the military. So, they may be, farmers, some of the time, and then there'll be members of this militia. But it shows that the military, I think, is getting quite desperate in an effort to try and suppress these grassroots groups which are popping up all over the country. And once again, it shows that really the military just do not care about the international reaction. They don't care too much about whether their image is damaged in the country or abroad. What they care about is hanging on to power.
Yes, I want to ask you more about the international reaction in a moment, but from what I understand, Myanmar's Sagaing region in which this attack took place, traditionally, as we heard in the story previously, was actually a recruiting ground for the Myanmar military. It's now become a bastion of resistance. Wasn't that in the past. So why is this now a centre for rebellion against the junta?
Well, Sagaing is an ethnic Bama, majority area. It's quite close. It goes on the banks of the main river in the country, the Irrawaddy, and it has been part of what you might call the Bama ethnic Bama heartland of Myanmar. So it's quite different, say, from the more mountainous regions along the Chinese border, which are populated by non-Bama ethnic groups. And so it's been a place, where the army, which appeals to a Bama nationalist movement, nationalist ideology, has recruited not just its soldiers, but also the rest of the core of the regime. And so for these areas, I think, to be turning against the military must be very worrying for the generals in Naypyidaw. And I suppose this is a way of, from their perspective, that demonstrating an iron fist is a way of trying to prevent other areas falling into the control of the rebels.
You mentioned the international reaction. We know the likes of the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres has condemned the attack on Sagaing, but you also mentioned that is now and in the past, international reaction really hasn't been of a concern to the country's military rulers. What will it take for the junta to listen to some of these warnings from other world leaders? We know China has been a traditional ally. Does Beijing have a role in this?
It certainly has a role, but I mean, the jet that dropped this bomb was made in Russia, and the arms supplies which are keeping the junta going are coming from Russia. So Russia, I think, has the #1 responsibility for the current atrocity. But the problem is that no one is sufficiently, worried about what's going on in Myanmar to actually do anything about it. The Chinese aren't going to put pressure. The Indians aren't going to put pressure because they see each other sort of in a competition for influence in the region. None of the Southeast Asian, or very few of the Southeast Asian states, are willing to actually, justify some kind of intervention. A lot of the Southeast Asian countries, like Vietnam, for example, or Cambodia, are worried about, setting a precedent that they don't want to sort of authorize external intervention in a Southeast Asian country. The Myanmar military launders its money through Singapore. The Philippines is probably one of the countries that have been more outspoken in the need to defend democracy, that kind of thing. But for ASEAN, the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, to do anything, they need a consensus of all 10 or 9 members at the moment. So, that seems very unlikely. So, and of course, with the Europeans and the Americans and other countries distracted by what's happening in Ukraine, it's like Myanmar is a second-order issue that they can palm off to the Southeast Asians, and the Southeast Asians aren't going to do anything about it.
Okay, Bill Hayton, we'll have to leave it there, but really good to get your analysis. Thank you very much for joining us.